Manifesto, a new must-read book from Jesse Kelly. Get your copy today at jessekellybook.com or wherever books are sold.
I still love how creepy that guy's voice is. It's very ominous. Joining me now, Senator Ted Cruz from the great state of Texas, author of the book Justice Corrupted. And actually, Senator, before we get to me, which you know is my favorite subject, I actually do want to discuss exactly that right there with all this DOJ news and obviously the anticipation of this indictment of Trump and everything that's happened there. Senator, I never in my life have I heard so many people, regular people, so afraid of their government. It's just a really ominous place to be. People are afraid of this government. It's bad.
Well, and for good reason. And actually, the two books are connected. Justice Corrupted is all about how it starts in the Obama administration, how hardcore leftists took over the Department of Justice, took over the FBI, took over the IRS, and began using them as weapons to attack their political enemies. And it walks through how Richard Nixon had tried that decades before and failed. And what Nixon tried to do, Obama succeeded in doing. Then when Trump became president, what happened was those bitter partisans burrowed into senior positions within the agencies and began waging war on Donald Trump. And the deep state, for 4 years of Trump's presidency, they did everything they could to destroy the presidency because they hated the man who'd been elected president and they hated the American people who'd voted for him. And now with Joe Biden, those vicious partisans have come out in the open. They are brazen. Merrick Garland, and it gives me no pleasure to say this, is the most partisan and political attorney general we've ever had. John Mitchell, who went to prison for his corruption, would roll over in his grave to see how Merrick Garland is perfectly willing to treat the Department of Justice as the political enforcers for the Biden White House. It is frightening. It is dangerous. And I believe Merrick Garland plans to indict Donald Trump like the old communist who worked for Stalin said, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. He knows who he wants to indict, and he's going to find any way to do it.
Can you explain to us, because you know more about this history really than anybody. I understand how they think. I understand that they use power like they're using it now, but why was Nixon unable and these people were able? What changed?
Well, what changed is the system pressed back. When Nixon tried to direct, for example, the IRS to go after his political enemies, when Nixon tried to use the machinery of government, the system pressed back and said, no, that's not our job. We're supposed to be apolitical. We're not supposed to be drawn into this. What changed is that under Obama was viewed as so enlightened that the system saluted and said, sir, yes, sir. And they were happy. You look at Lois Lerner, who ran a major division of the IRS, explicitly targeted conservatives, targeted Tea Party groups. They didn't like the Tea Party because it had risen up from the citizens and it was a threat to government power. They went after citizens groups. Some of the words that made you suspect, if you were a group that focused on the Constitution, that focused on the Bill of Rights, that focused on freedom, that focused on liberty, if you were pro-life, if you were pro-Israel, they targeted you, they persecuted you, they went after you. Now, when that became public, it became public because the Inspector General at the Department of Treasury uncovered it. And in response, Barack Obama held a press conference at the White House. And he said he was angry. And he said the American people have a right to be angry. That was a nod to the way systems were supposed to work. Well, what happened next? The Justice Department stonewalled and protected Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner pleaded the Fifth, refused to testify before Congress. Congress held her in contempt, and the Obama Department of Justice refused to prosecute her for that contempt. In other words, Obama's protestations about being angry were lies, and we're seeing that fight play out right now. Right now, we've got Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, doing the same thing, defying Congress, refusing to give over the FBI form where they had evidence, they had allegations that Joe Biden was involved in a $5 million bribery scheme. And the FBI is doing the same thing Lois Lerner did, which is stiff arm. No, we won't give it to you. We don't work for the American people. The House is going to hold him in contempt. And I predict right now The Biden Justice Department will do the same thing that the Obama Justice Department did, which is refuse to prosecute the contempt case.
Ah, what a place to be. You know, let's focus on something happy. Let's focus on me being a world-famous author now. Do you look at me differently?
There you go.
You're a senator. I'm a world-famous author. We're both kind of important.
Well, look, I will say you have all the skills to be a world-famous author. For one thing, I just look at how your camera's framed and my camera's framed. You're at least 6 inches taller than I am on the TV screen, and that's really well done. I mean, you know, Johnny Carson would have his guests sit down in these short little chairs. And look, that is a dominant, it's a power move, Jesse. It's strong. I got to give you props.
I swear on my life, that was actually accidental, Senator, but I do feel taller today. Now that I'm a literary master, really. I feel taller, I feel bigger, I feel better than the people I see around me who haven't written a book on communism and fighting back against it. And look, your family has experienced, in all seriousness,
yes.
Your family's experienced real communism in Cuba. You really do know, especially your father, God bless him, knows exactly what it's like.
Yeah, look, you know my dad well. And for me, communism, it's not theoretical, it's not abstract. I hate communists. I hate them to the very depths of my bones. Communists are evil. My father, as a kid, grew up in Cuba, was imprisoned, was tortured. My aunt, my tia Sonia, Fidel Castro's goons, threw her in prison and tortured her. And communism brings misery, suffering, death, poverty, everywhere it appears. It is vicious, and what's terrifying is communism now is not limited to the Soviet Union or Russia. It's not limited just to China or North Korea or Cuba, but we're seeing communism in America. You are absolutely right in your latest book that the spread of communists through education, through K through 12 education, through universities, through corporate America, it is unabashed Marxism, and it is dangerous, and we've got to know what it is, and we've got to stand up and be prepared to fight back at it.
Senator, speaking of the education system, this is something that I know you know well because you've been to all these fancy schools and perfect grades and things like that. And now parents who have their kids coming up and they want the best for their kids, they want their kids to go to Harvard. They want their kids to go to Princeton. Parents want their kids to be successful and things like that. And what's happened to our elite universities, in my opinion, is one of the most damaging things because these universities produce our senators. You're sitting here. They produce our CEOs. They produce our senators. They produce our presidents. And if they're producing something else now, and they very much are, that's a big problem for the country.
Look, our universities are the Wuhan lab where the woke virus was created. The universities, the Marxists crawled into them. They took them over, beginning in the 1960s, beginning in the 1970s. You mentioned Harvard. I went to Harvard Law School. My father would refer to my time up there as missionary work. And there was not a lot of exaggeration. They practically were cannibals ready to boil you in oil. And the amazing thing is, when I was there, it was 1,000 times better than it is today. They were just seizing the institution. They had not yet imposed their draconian power to silence dissent. I got to say, you and I are both parents, and it's a hard choice for any parent. Do you pay a university $500,000 to indoctrinate your children to hate America and hate you? And then that's a really lousy situation that we find ourselves with virtually every major university in the country.
That sure is. Senator, appreciate you very much, sir. Keep fighting a good fight.
Thank you, Jesse. I do want to ask briefly, the narrator on your ad, did you find an actual communist to do that ad? Because it really does sound like Che Guevara pulled out of the grave saying, buy Jesse Kelly's book. Well done, my friend.
It does. It's so scary. I'm going to buy it myself, and I have free ones. Senator, thank you, sir.
Take care.
All right.
The Anti-Communist Manifesto, a new must-read book from Jesse Kelly. Get your copy today at jessekellybook.com or wherever books are sold.